This is a very scary episode of the Productivityist podcast. Why? Well, because I'm going to do something very scary, and I'm going to talk about my big work, my big thing, the Now Year formula. And people have been waiting on it, and now you're going to hear me talk about it. So let's just get to it, shall we? Welcome to the Productivityist podcast. I'm Mike Vardy, and this is a very special episode because I am facing a fear. As some of you hear this, which is the Tuesday, I will be doing this on the 26th. Those of you who are at the $5 and above level, you're hearing this in anticipation of what I'm going to be doing on May 26th, and that is delivering a live streaming workshop. Now, I haven't done this on my own before in terms of me, kind of bankrolling the thing or whatever. I did the Creative Live one, which was great, and it was about 2 years ago now, and things have evolved since then. I've got some new things that I want to talk about, and one big thing that I definitely want to talk about. But this thing is pretty intense, because over the past year and a bit, and I think even beyond that, ironically enough, since the workshop is called Beyond Productivity, I have been working on something that has kind of slowly but surely risen to the top of everything else that I've been doing. And if you subscribe to the Productivityist newsletter, then you would have seen that I was leaving GTD behind and chronicling that experience, not necessarily in real time, but you would have seen the series there. And then if you read the blog post, which I'll link to in the show notes, where I outline the series, and then I talk a little bit about where I'm going with my productivity approach now and what I'm using now. That still isn't as terrifying for me. It was fearful for me to say, hey, I've left GTD behind. Here's the thing I'm doing now. But to now go and do a 4 plus hour presentation, because there's going to be lunch and breaks and all that stuff. But to do that in front of a live studio audience and then live stream it all over the web at the same time from my own hometown, it's a bit nerve-wracking. I've spoken before. I've done keynotes. That's not the thing. I can talk. I can talk. But this is what I believe to be my seminal work, and that's why it's scary. And what I want to talk about this week is not just the Now Year formula and the Beyond Productivity workshop, but I want to talk about what it is when you've got this thing that's in you, and it's been in you for a while, and you finally start to put it out there, because it's not something that you're putting out there with entire purpose or intent. It's just kind of organically coming out of you over time. And that's what's happened with the Now Year and the Now Year formula. To give you a bit of history, the Now Year has been around for a while. It's evolved, and interestingly enough, in an upcoming episode when I talk to Omar Zemholm, we're going to talk about Webinar Ninja and how it's evolved. And the Now Year has evolved similarly, in that the Now Year was a calendar book, a calendar management ebook, a practical guide to calendar management. And it's still out there. It's floating around. You could probably get it. I'm not selling it anymore, but I have noticed a few sales come in from errant links that we've had out there, and that's fine. But that's what it was. And it did pretty well. I think that I would have much rather, and I'm going to actually do this in a future iteration of the Productivityist workbook, is put the calendar component in there. But some of the calendar component that's in the Now Year ebook, and if you have that book, A, it's a collector's item, and B, because the Now Year originated from there, but also B, when I do the Productivityist workbook, I will be incorporating that in some of that stuff into the new version of that. So I'm excited about that, but I'm also excited about the fact that if you have the Now Year ebook, you will probably get some other stuff from me down the line as well that will kind of show you, hey, here's some strategies and stuff that you can still use for calendar management. But it kind of started there, and then, I decided that it should have been within the Productivityist workbook in the first place. And then I started to think about my own productivity approach and how I've kind of shifted away from GTD, and none of the other ones really resonated with me, at least not in full, Agile, Scrum, Covey's stuff, all that, even some of Tony Robbins' stuff, like none of that stuff really totally stuck. But there were things that I was developing that definitely did. For me, that was a kind of I guess an epiphany of sorts. And the real epiphany was like, okay, I'm going to do this thing called the Now Year. I'm going to reinvigorate this and revitalize this, because the Now Year to me is so much more than just, a calendar thing. If you've bought the Now Year calendar, which you can get from New Year, and I'll put that in the show notes as well, although we're at the midway point, and I think we're of the year. Not that I don't think you can start the year in May or June, but I started to think about what the Now Year meant, and I was driving to pick up my wife, and you get to this point where, I'll backtrack a bit. You get to this point where you've been specializing in something for a long time, and then you start to strategize more. So you start to kind of come up with your own stuff. Whether it's through an evolution of other things that are out there, or your own take on it, or whatever. In my mind, I think that a lot of what I've come up with is just through my own, experimentation and understanding and knowing of myself, and also dealing with other people through productivity as coaching. And workshops, of course. But, so I started to strategize more, and I did a lot more planning. For those of you who got the newsletter and saw my productivity, the office where I show my zones, I spent a lot of time in the planning section and in the reading section leading up to these moments. Now I'm firmly entrenched in the work section, because we're in total work mode. We're in production phase. But pre-production of the Now Year and the Now Year formula and these Beyond Productivity workshops, we're all kind of done sitting in a chair. Victoria Day weekend, I was at a cabin. There was stuff that was coming out there in my mind. On this Thought Top whiteboard, a transparent board, they were there as well, which is great. I'm going to do a review of that at some point as well. If the people at Thought Top have done great things with this thing, and I love it. I've been able to write down pretty much just whiteboardy type of thoughts there. But it didn't really happen. The final clincher was driving to pick my wife up, and I think she was coming back from Whitehorse, and I was going to the airport, and it was just me. So I think she was with the kids. Or one of the kids. I can't keep track of them. No, I know it was just me in the car. Let's put it that way. And she was coming back with my son. My daughter was at home. She was going home from school, so she was going to be fine. And I all of a sudden started to try to make the Now Year. It was an acronym in the calendar book, and that acronym no longer applies. But I'm driving it, and all of a sudden it came to me, and I pulled over. I don't pull over very often when I have ideas, because I normally just, I'm able to either, when I get to a light, just quickly, hit the button on my phone or whatever, and just go, remember to write down this. So, but I pulled over, and I wrote down need to do, ought to do, want to do. And the whole drive after I wrote that still stuck with me. And then the other thoughts started to race around my head. Like, what does this mean? Well, that's the genesis of the Now Year, really, in its current form, is the Now Year and the Now Year formula, for the sake of calling it an approach, is a system that's simple in that it can be used with virtually any productivity device you have. Paper, spreadsheets. I was talking to Joel Zaslofsky. Man, it's tough to say his last name. Joel Zaslofsky of Simple Rev. And I was saying, there's something about this that you could even do it in a spreadsheet. And he's a spreadsheet guy, so he liked that. But I mean, the approach is simple enough that you could, use it with what you're currently using. It's flexible enough that it works for, a variety of people, creatives, CEOs, all over the spectrum it works. I've even taught this to kids, to high school kids that are getting ready to go to college, because there's something about it that really resonates. And then it's durable because it's internalized. You build it so it's one of those. I think the approach is so humanly it's so connected that it doesn't take as long to. I'm going to use grok. It doesn't take as long to kind of get to know, because you're spending time getting to know yourself as well. So it doesn't require a ton of setup. You could start doing it today. You could start doing it now and slowly add to it. Kind of like, a house. A house is you have a frame, and then you can you could live inside the house once the walls are up and the roof is on, and then you can add the rooms afterwards. And then, of course, if the rooms are there, then you can add the furniture afterwards. So it's very malleable. It's flexible, it's simple, but the durability is so huge because there's so many systems out there that if one domino falls, that all goes, or it seems to all go, and then you give up on it. And don't get me wrong, I think that all of the systems that I've looked at and others have out there, I think they all have merits and they all work for different people. And all I'm doing is creating a new system, crafting a new system that will work for other people. But that's what the Now Year formula was born from. And that's what I've been working on, behind the scenes. There's a reason that Productivityist became a company. There's a reason that I've asked for more help in terms of writing articles. And this past week, if there were no articles from me on the website because I am busy preparing for this workshop. As I record this, I am in the throes of a week away from this workshop, and it's a big one. There's going to be a lot of people paying attention to it, and I want to teach a lot of people, I want to help a lot of people. And at the end of the show here, I'm going to give you a way to join in and be part of that at a reduced rate as well, because I believe that this is something that can help a lot of people. I've seen it help people. It's the mode-based work idea is something that a lot of people can wrap their head around, because one of the more common questions that we tend to ask ourselves is, why didn't I do something? Well, I didn't feel like it. We tend to position our days around the clock instead of, or let the clock position our days rather than position our days around the clock. So, I've talked about the theming practice, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about, where I say, hey, this is what Monday means, this is what Tuesday means. And then you get to the daily mapping process, which I've talked about in the Now Your Formula Report newsletters, and I'm going to talk about more at the workshop. But basically, you're driven not by the action. The action is like the fourth consideration. In fact, the great thing about it is that you can actually, as opposed to a lot of other, productivity formulas and systems, you don't have to write down the verb if you don't want to, if your mode is active enough. So, for example, if I wrote down like, here's an article for an upcoming newsletter. It's why theming works. If I just write down why theming works and I put the mode newsletter writing or just writing, and then I put the project newsletter, which is probably more apt as to what I'm going to do, I can look at that and go, oh, that's the topic of the newsletter that I'm going to write. So it's great for quick capture. It simplifies things, because I know I've run into this a ton of times where I've asked people, hey, don't forget to write down that verb. But we have so many things coming at us all the time that the capture habit becomes strained. And then the reviewing habit becomes strained. I only review twice a month. The 15th and the 30th of the month end and mid-month. And that's because I journal daily. So the review process is far simpler for me because, in essence, I'm doing it more often in a manner of connecting with what I have going on. And because I do the 3 absolutes, where I write down what the 3 tasks I need to do the next day, the night before, like it's a different type of system that doesn't, it propels, I believe it propels you forward, in a way that produces work, not just today, not just tomorrow, but the weeks and months beyond. And that's the thing, is you can work this either from top to bottom or bottom to top. You could start with your year and work your way down and go with the big life plans and the larger stuff, and then scale back down to the day and then map out your day. Or you could start with just today and map out just today and then build upon that to the weeks and the months and the years. These things stack upon each other, and that's what you want. I mean, it's funny. One of the things that I love about the toys that my son and I both played with are that, and my daughter too, is that they are simple. They have transcended, time in a lot of ways. Let's look at Lego as a great example. I mean, they are building blocks. Sure, there have been modifiers. I mean, I know Merlin Mann talked about this eons ago on Back to Work, I believe, where he talked about how, like, remember when Lego didn't come with manuals, or it came with like one thing you could build and then you just built stuff, or you just threw the manual aside and built what you wanted. Now, of course, there's like ardent, really high-end manuals that if you, and a lot of kids, mine own included, say, no, this isn't the way to build it, Dad. This is the instructions we have to follow. It doesn't look like the picture. So Lego has evolved, but the building block, no pun intended, pun actually totally intended, of Lego is it's still simple. It stacks. Like, I mean, you build things with these bricks, And you could use any number of bricks. You could build a wall with all of the little tiny single pieces if you wanted to, or the flat pieces, or the two, the four blocks, or the longer ones. You have so many ways to do this, and it's the same thing with a day. You have so many different ways you can tackle a day. I mean, and that's why I like this mapping process, is that if you want to speed through the day and get as much done as possible, then take the freeway. That's fine. Point A to point B, and you just go by schedule. Use the S column, go there, all done. Then take the scenic route and go by mode-based work. Or if you need to speed all the way through because you've got a deadline, then you just focus on the project at hand, and you focus on that. The action kind of becomes the descriptive term more than anything else. It's then say the mode or the project or the schedule, because without the other three, nothing happens. And that's what we often have going on with our to-do list anyways. We have these things on our list and we can't quite identify them. Adding just a simple mode-based activity, adding a project to it, which we were generally doing anyways, although we tend not to live by project as much as we tend to work by it. And then having a schedule component there really can help you. So that's all of these things are going to lead up to how the Now Your formula can work and work for you. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. Because it's I obviously want you to come in and see the workshop and be part of that. But I also want you to you're going to get a lot more out of it if you do that. I want you to come back and read some of the materials, because some of that stuff is going to stick with you better in written form as well as just watching it live. But I do want to touch on the mapping process a little bit more. So the M stands for mode, A stands for action, P stands for project, but S stands for schedule. And this is something that I know I'm going to address and in the workshop, but I also want to address now, is that I've talked about how I don't focus on time, I focus on task. I've always said that despite that, I do understand the value of time. It's our most valuable resource. It's non-renewable. We must invest it wisely, because unlike currency, like actual money, we can't get we can't get it back. Like, it's not like we can earn time. There's that movie In Time, which Justin Timberlake was in, which I watched simply because of the fascination of time as currency. And it's if you watch it with that frame of mind, it's a totally different movie, especially considering what I do. But schedule management to me is far more, if you want to talk about time management, schedule management is easier in my mind to do in terms of wrapping your head around it. So, for example, I would say that schedule management is personal. My schedule, the schedule, like it's something that is solid. Time is so big that the schedule is something you can look at. Like, what's your schedule look like? What's your time look like? Well, that's a bit too big and a bit too lofty. What's your schedule look like for the next 3 days? Well, you could see that. What time are you available the next 3 days? All of a sudden, it creates honestly, it makes it, you look at too much, right? You can't really analyze it as well. So when I talk about schedule management in the Now Your formula, I'm not just talking about like specific times of day, but the S column, which is really interesting, is you can use schedule management to also help with priority management. Because when you schedule priorities, they happen, right? So if you say, hey, my priority is to get this thing done first, and instead of putting it as an AM task, especially if you're not a morning person and a night owl like me, and you may put a 1 beside it, then you know that's the top priority for the day. That's a scheduling component, right? You can also get specific with the time and say, I want this done by 2 p.m. and put 2 p.m. in that column, and then you know that's when it has to be done by. Or you could just say AM or PM, right? Because if you don't need to have it done at a specific time, it can at least fall into that category. So the bottom line is that schedule management, I'm spending a lot more time talking about that when I'm dealing with clients and in the Now Your formula, which of course there's a book and an e-course and all that stuff I'm working on, because like I said, as scary as this is, this stuff is in me, and it's going to be big, and I'm going to put it out there, and it will evolve. I mean, the daily mapping process may become its own thing and become the thing that maybe the Now Your formula turns into some other name. I don't know, but I'm following the credo of just ship it in a lot of ways, but I'm delivering. I'm going to deliver the goods, right? So schedule the S column is nice because unlike the other ones, unlike the action, which is going to be filled from top to bottom. Schedule you want to have as sparingly filled as possible, because then your flexibility goes away. If you overuse that schedule column, then you're going to feel overwhelmed. And the way it's designed, you're not going to want to, because the modes also will be filled. Modes are going to be the thing that are going to be more attached to every single task anyways. You're going to go, okay, what mode do I need to be in to accomplish this? Is it a low energy mode task? Are there multiple modes? You get low energy email mode, high energy email. You can have modes are going to be really, really critical. And projects, that's the other beauty about this is just to deviate and talk about projects for a second, is that in a lot of terms, you have to create a project for these things. Is this a miscellaneous project? With the Now Year formula, you just put if it's no project, if it's just, you just leave it blank. And you know that the mode essentially usurps projects anyways. We want to start working by mode, because that's how we live. We live by mode. Like right now, I am in podcasting mode. That's what I'm doing, which it could be part of a larger mode as creative mode, or it's let's say it's media day for me here, and that's the theme of the day, and therefore podcasting falls into that category, or recording falls into that category. Right after this, I'm gonna go have dinner. That's family mode. That's part of dinner. Cooking dinner, family mode, or household maintenance mode, or daddy mode. There are so many ways that you can make this personal, and I've written about how you need to make productivity personal, because if it isn't personal, then it won't have as strong a connection with you. You won't have a strong connection with the tasks that are on the list, which means that they won't be done as effectively. Sure, they could be done efficiently, but they won't be done as effectively. The quality of the work will suffer over time. That's why what's interesting is that when I announced that I was leaving GTD behind, I had a large group of people that were supportive. I would say 75 to 80%. I had about a 25 to 20% ratio that was saying, if you are no longer going to be a GTD guy, then I'm not going to be a GTD. I'm not going to follow you. There are the people that are ardent supporters of that framework, and that's great, because you need to be passionate about that stuff. You can hear in my voice that I'm passionate about it. You need to be passionate about your approach, because the stuff on your list matters. The modes that are strictly yours matter. Your schedule matters. And if you aren't attached to the thing that helps you move those things forward, then it's not for you. That's why so many people have evolved their own approaches over time, or abandoned them, because they can't find themselves as invested in them as they need to be. Now, you don't have to be fanatical about it. And by the way, I'm not saying that anybody was fanatical about it when they said, hey, you're leaving GT behind, you're crazy. It's more along the lines, some people are going to be, I'm fanatical in a large respect about what I do, because I love this stuff. But you do need to be passionate. You do need to connect with it. You do need to have a feel for it, because ultimately, when we look at our list and we look at the things that we want to do, we have to get through the things that we need to do. And I use the term need to do, and I've talked about this in the episode with Schechter and Patrick Rohn a few episodes back, more than a few, where I said, I prefer the term need over have, because if I say I have to do something, it feels like I'm being forced to do it by some outside force, like by some outside person. If I say I need to do it, then it says, well, why do I need to do it? It asks, the need could be, because I need to, earn a living, or I need to, the grass needs to be cut, because if it doesn't, then it's going to be harder to cut next time. Whereas if I have to cut the grass, well, why? Well, because so-and-so said so. It's just again, maybe it's semantics, but it's just the verbiage. There's just something about the way the trigger words, like why I use Inbox as my default notebook in Evernote. I call everything inbox, because it spurs a certain reaction. So exactly the same thing with using the term need. But the ought to stuff's interesting, because when you are in mode-based work, you get to connect better with the things you need to do and the things you want to do. And those ought to do things really stick out. Like, wait a minute, should I? And the ought tos are interesting because they more or less should be a need or a want. One or the other. Otherwise, they wouldn't be an ought to. At least that's why they're there. Eventually, if you evaluate it, you may find that once you get the things you need to do done, then they no longer, some of those things ought not to be done, or ought not to be done by you. So the Now Year formula allows you to get through the things that you need to do, better evaluate what you ought to do or ought not to do, and then ultimately get to the things that you want to do. And that's what I'm going to be talking about on the 26th. Now, I'm going to be doing this live here in Victoria, and it's going to be 4 hours. I do not expect you to be there with me for 4 hours all at once. Unless you're in the live studio audience, in which case you're going to have a great time. But if you are live streaming and watching the event live, you will have access to the replay and the whenever you want it. So it's going to be there. I will put a link in the show notes as to where it is and how you can get tickets. But I'll also give you a promo code. So for those of you that are listening to this episode, not Patreon supporters, you've got a completely different code, so which you'll have gotten in the activity area of Patreon. So don't jump on that. Don't jump on this one. You're going to get a completely different code. To get the virtual ticket, which is normally $39, you're going to get $10 off. So you're basically getting a 33% discount. Just use the promo code PROD podcast, so PROD podcast upon checkout, and just go to beyondproductivity.com and you'll get $10 off. And that gives you access to the entire show, replay and all, for just $29, which is a great deal. You're not going to get this. You're getting in on the ground floor, basically. Once this thing is taken off, and it will take off. Once this thing is really going, you're going to say, well, I remember when. I remember when I saw Mike Vardy do this thing streaming, and it was, and this is actually going to be less than what the courses are going to be. So when the courses come out, they're going to be a little bit more too. So for $29, again, $39 plus a $10 discount if you use the promo code PROD podcast, go to beyondproductivity.com and you'll get that discount. So that's it for this week. I just wanted to put this out there and talk a little bit about why this was so important. A bit of an introduction to the Now Year formula. You can sign up for the if you go to productivityist.com/NYF report, you can sign up for the newsletter that will give you updates on the Now Year report and how things are going. I've got a lot of other things that I'm working on with regards to this big work of mine. This is my big work. This is my big thing. And I really want to bring it to the world and deliver it to the world. And I hope you'll check it out when it becomes available next week on the 26th of May, and then beyond that, as you do with Beyond Productivity. Thanks again for listening this week. We'll be back next week with another episode. You will be able to grab this, of course, and rate and review it on iTunes. And as you should do that. That'd be awesome. It'll help more people find the show. And if you want to support the show and get access to it earlier and get even greater discounts on things that I'm doing, you can go to patreon.com/productivityist, and perks from $1 all the way up to $50 or even beyond that. And there's different perk levels for all of those. And that just helps me, do even more with the show. So things like, be able to pay the editor and also level up the podcast. I've created a special Patreon feed just for Patreon subscribers, so they get a completely different episode because their episode's going to be a bit longer, right? So they're going to get that, which is great. I want to be able to go to podcast movement this year, and this kind of things. I mean, there are things that I want to be able to do with the podcast that Patreon definitely allows me to do a little bit easier. So, but if you can't support monetarily, then a rating, review, be fine, or just socially share the episode. I'd love to get as many people possible watching this show, watching me do my thing for 4+ hours on stage next week. So thanks again for listening. We will see you all next week. Until then, keep moving things forward. Have a great one.